Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to quickly do a recent read kind of wrap up to talk about the things that I've picked up since I did my last recent reads. It's been a few weeks, and not because I haven't been reading, but because I've done a few video projects that I wanted to finish before I started this video. I did a YA fantasy reading vlog where I read 5 brand new like YA fantasy, or I started 5 new YA fantasy series, and I read them in a vlog and I talked about them. In that video, I read 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. I gave it 3 stars. I tried reading The Reader by Tracy Chee. I DNF'd that one. I also picked up The Stormcrow by Kaylin Josephson. I also picked up There Will Come a Darkness by Katie Rose Poole. I gave this one like 3.5 stars. My favorite book in that video ended up being The Bells by Danielle Clayton. I gave this one 4 stars. Feel free to go watch that video if you want like more thoughts or any thoughts, because I'm not really going to talk about them in this video. I also recently posted a 24-hour timed reading challenge vlog where I read for exactly 24 hours. In that vlog, I read Good Girl Bad Blood. This is a YA mystery thriller, the 2nd book in Holly Jackson's Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed it, and I will continue on for the 3rd and final book in that series. I also picked up Arrows of the Queen by Mercedes Lackey. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I also picked up an ebook copy of The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal. I gave this one 3 stars. I picked up the 1st volume of Heaven Official's Blessing by MXTX. This was my favorite in that vlog. I gave it 4 stars, more like 4.5 stars. But I really enjoyed this. And the last book I finished in that vlog was The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I gave this one 4 stars. So if you want my full thoughts on those books, I will also link that vlog below. It should also be like my most recent upload. So technically in that 24-hour vlog, I did start The Amulet of Samarkand, the 1st book in the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud, but I didn't get to finish this book. I got like to page 380 and this book is like 460 pages. I didn't want to talk about that book not having finished it, so I'm gonna talk about it now. Our main character is about 11 years old, but he does read slightly older, like 16, 17, 18. Our main character in this book is a magician's assistant. They can basically summon like a number of magical beings from a different realm to do their bidding, so it's kind of like a summoning based magic system, which I don't read a lot of. And our main character is very ambitious, and he starts doing magic that is not really supposed to be for people at his age, at his skill level, but he does accomplish some magical feats. In particular, he summons a genie named Bartimaeus. He basically wants to get revenge on this older adult who kind of wronged him in a way, and he ends up getting involved in some much larger political plot. I liked a majority of this book. This book also has footnotes, which I don't mind. I like footnotes, but I know that sometimes people don't like them because it's like excessive unnecessariness. I love it because of world building purposes, and I love world building, but I know not everyone's gonna like footnotes, but they're in here. I did not love the ending. It felt very like winging it, and I think at some point, if I remember correctly, one character asked the other like, what's the plan once we get to like where we have to go and we have to like defeat the bad guy. I think he basically says we'll figure it out when we get there, and I don't love that feeling in like wrapping up books. Didn't love the ending, so that's why I kind of gave it like 3.5-ish stars. It also ended up in a way that I don't feel like I have to read the next book. Most of the major questions were answered. There's definitely some hints at what's to come in the future, but I'm not like super pressed to continue on. I will in like an audiobook format if it's available to me at my library, but I'm not gagged to physically read books 2 and 3 because it felt too dense for me. Not that I can't or didn't understand this, but like for the content that it is, it just felt very heavy for a middle grade-ish YA-ish type book, so I'd rather just listen to an audiobook version of this. It's not like hard or anything, but I don't know, I just didn't love physically reading it. So I read The Cybernetic Cheese Shop by Meredith Katz. This is like a very cozy, very quick sci-fi romance. In this one, we follow a robot who does have sentience. They do have like an AI. They are smart. They do feel things kind of, and she runs a tea shop that has been left to her by her previous owner, who's now died for quite some time. Her being a robot, she lives for a while. She's not aging, and while she's working at the tea shop, she meets someone who does like specialize in like fixing robotic things, and it's a little romance. It's cute, it's quick. I think if you like Legends and Lattes and you want like a sci-fi version of that, maybe pick up this one. It is sapphic, and both of the characters are essentially, I would say they're probably on the asexual spectrum. One of them is a robot, so she doesn't like want to or feel the need to, and the other character is not a robot, but she also has talked about not wanting any kind of physical interaction. So and I gave that one 4 stars. I also picked up Fire Touch by Patricia Briggs. I gave this one 4 stars. This is the 9th book in her Mercy Thompson series, which I've been loving more and more with each installment. Pretty much since like book 6 or 7, I've been like loving them more and more. In this particular one, I can't get too much into it plot wise, it's the 9th book, but essentially Mercy kind of gets in the middle of a like fae werewolf kind of squabble, and she kind of intensifies the issues that they have with each other territory wise, and tensions rise, and she kind of started it a little, but I've been loving it. It's an urban fantasy. I love urban paranormal kind of fantasies right now, like a lot. This is probably one of my favorites. I also listened to The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite, I believe is the author's name. I'm gonna give this one 4 stars. It is a historical sapphic romance. In this one, we follow a young woman whose father was a astronomist, a very like well-respected, well-renowned one, but as her father got older, he started relying on her to do like the more math physics aspect of the job, while he kind of like did like most of the theory crafting and all that kind of stuff. But after he passed, she kind of wants to continue in that field despite being a woman, and most people did not actually know that she was like the mathematical brains behind the operation, at least for like the last couple of years of her father's life. And she basically meets a woman who's going to start to essentially be her patron, this older woman. When I say older, I mean like late 30s. Her husband has also recently passed away, and a romance happens. A lot of discussions about like women and their place in history and their developments and their contributions to many fields. So if you like that alongside like a nice sapphic romance, I had a good time. After that, I read Magic Strikes by Ilona Andrews. This is like the 2nd or 3rd book in the Kate Daniels series. Love this series. It started out really strong for me, and it keeps getting better and better, whereas like the Mercy Thompson one, I love it now, was a little bit of a rough start for me, but I'm loving the series. I'm not sure if this is a book 2 or 3, but I don't know, I love it. We follow Kate Daniels, who's like this kind of like go-between, government official between like magical problems and the government. It's this whole thing. I really enjoy it. The setting of this world is so interesting to me. It takes place in a world that is struggling to find balance between like magic and tech, and it used to be a very tech dominant world, like the world that we live in today, but at some point tech kind of collapsed and magic kind of came back, and there's like flares of like magic and tech moments, but for the most part like magic does reign for the most part. So I think that's really cool. Can't get too much into the plot because part of it is like very like monster of the week funness, and I think we're starting to get into some of Kate Daniels' like backstory. If you read one urban paranormal fantasy, you kind of like get the vibe of like, you know, what they kind of entail. I also read The Serpency by Martha Wells. This is the 2nd book in the Books of Roxura world that she has. This is probably like technically creatively the best book in this wrap up. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I think the series is so stunning and so amazing, and Martha Wells is already a really accomplished like author and really well respected, but she's mostly known for her Murderbot stuff and some of her newer releases and some of her reprints that are going on right now. But I really recommend this fantastical world that she's created. In the first book, we meet our main character Moon, who, as far as he knows, is the only being of his kind. There are no like human type people in this series. Everything's a fantastical creature, and he's this kind of like dragon kind of serpent type shapeshifter who has like a more like non-winged form and like a winged form. You can probably see what they kind of look like on the cover here. But in the first book, he again doesn't really think any other of his kind exists until he meets another older being who is what he is, and this older man tells him, hey, I can take you to our community or a community of others like us. And Moon does agree, but he doesn't know that there's kind of like strings attached almost. It's like a really good one kind of coming of age, finding yourself and a place for you in this world. But it's also really great at exploring like different cultures and stuff. Martha Wells, I believe, is an anthropologist, and you can definitely see that in her work. My favorite part of like this book was Moon basically just like meeting other cultures and trying to like understand like what he should not say, what's taboo, what's not taboo, little things like that. I really enjoyed. Obviously there's a bigger story at hand than just like Moon meeting a bunch of different people. Also, not the shadows. I also didn't realize there were shadows, so I'm sorry if that's been bothering some people. I'll try not to like get in the way of them. Anyways, but yeah, this second book was fantastic, phenomenal, the best settings. I don't want to like spoil like anything for anyone, but like I believe there's like floating islands in the first one, and this one, kind of a spoiler, not that much, it's just like the setting, but a good chunk of the story takes place on the back of a giant like leviathan sea monster. I think that is like the coolest, sickest thing ever. So yeah, if you want like a fantasy that just feels different than like other stuff, maybe try this one. It's a little dense as well. It's a lot, but it's like a lot of fun too. So yeah, this one's excellent. And the last book I want to quickly touch on is Fire in His Blood by Ruby Dixon. This is a Ruby Dixon standard. If you've ever read Ruby Dixon, she's the same author as like the Ice Planet Barbarian stuff. This is like her more darker dragon romance type series. It's kind of dystopian as well. This story does take place on Earth, but it takes place in a world where like the skies opened up and like a bunch of dragons kind of came through. It's more sci-fi, so I'm assuming it's like more of like a portal kind of wormhole type thing as opposed to like magic, because these dragons are from a different planet. It's more sci-fi, so I guess that's maybe what happened. This is only book 2. We haven't really gotten into like the deep kind of dragon lore a bit. We're mostly still seeing young women fall in love with dragons, their romances, so they're very focused on romance, and then like the background story comes second. So yeah, it's also fairly smutty too. These are a bit darker though, and sometimes Ruby Dixon does kind of start treading into darker romance, and not so heavily like some other darker, notorious darker romances, but it's not as light and fluffy as her Ice Planet series. So this might not be for you, even if you do like her Ice Planet stuff. Read the first one. If you don't like it, that's fine. I listened to them on audiobook from my library, and I gave this like 3 stars. There is like built-in miscommunication in these stories as well, because these dragons don't immediately know how to speak English, and obviously these young women don't know how to speak this dragon draconian language until they can like fuse their like essences together or whatever. It's this whole thing, but there's built-in miscommunication, but it's not like dumb. It's kind of to be expected if you're talking to an alien from a different planet. So yeah, they're okay. They're just like fun. I don't want to say fluffy because they can be a little bit darker, but you know, they're entertainment, romance, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I've read since the last time I checked in. Again, feel free to quickly go through those vlogs if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts about these other books that I had to skip over. Feel free to talk to me down below in the comments about anything that I've talked about. I'd like to hear anything that you have to say down below. I will also like my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.